They said it was impossible. A tiny island, smaller than most major cities, with no natural resources, no oil, no minerals, and barely enough land to feed its people. Everyone told Singapore that it would never succeed. And yet, Singapore rose. From the moment it became independent in 1965, this tiny nation faced a mountain of challenges: poverty, overcrowding, political uncertainty, and the skepticism of the world. But Singapore refused to accept limits. It refused to be defined by size or geography. It refused to be ordinary. What makes Singapore remarkable isn't just the skyline or the modern buildings. It's the people. It's the mindset. It's the unwavering belief that a nation could achieve excellence if every citizen, every leader, and every system worked together. Singapore transformed its challenges into strengths. A lack of natural resources became a reason to invest in people, education, and innovation. Limited land became an opportunity to plan cities with precision, beauty, and efficiency. Corruption was treated like a disease, not a norm. Meritocracy became a way of life, not just a slogan. Every street, every school, every park reflects a country that thinks ahead, that builds not for today, but for generations to come. This is a country that shows the world what vision, discipline, and unity can accomplish. Other nations watched in awe. How could a place so small achieve so much? How could a country with no resources become one of the wealthiest, safest, and most admired in the world? And more importantly, how could Singapore maintain this level of excellence for decades without faltering? It isn't luck, it isn't chance, it's strategy, vision, and values. Singapore's leaders understood one thing from the very beginning: a country's power is not measured by its size or its natural wealth, but by its people and how well it organizes its society. The schools in Singapore don't just teach facts, they teach discipline, critical thinking, and responsibility. The streets don't just carry cars, they reflect order and respect. The government doesn't just manage, it executes with precision and integrity. Every system is designed to work, and it does, consistently. This is a country that didn't wait for the world to notice. Singapore became the world's example, quietly, methodically, and brilliantly. It became a hub for finance, trade, and innovation. Its airport is ranked the best in the world, its port is one of the busiest, and its citizens live longer, safer, and healthier lives than in most countries.
Singapore's secret isn't just in the policies or the buildings, it's in the mentality, it's in the culture of excellence, the belief that small size is never a limitation, and the commitment to a shared vision of success. And yet the world still watches, still envies, and still tries to replicate it. Many countries have dreamed of building their own Singapore, a modern city-state, a hub of wealth, safety, and efficiency. Some have tried with ambition, investment, and technology. Others have studied Singaporean systems, hoping to copy the blueprint for success. But there's a reason they fail. You can copy the infrastructure, you can copy the laws, you can copy the city planning, but you cannot copy the mindset, the culture, the unity, and the shared purpose that Singapore has built over decades. Singapore is not just a country, it is a standard, a benchmark, a model of what human potential can achieve when aligned with vision and discipline. This is the story of Singapore, the story of how a tiny island became one of the most admired nations on Earth, and later how 15 other countries tried to replicate its success and discovered the truth: Singapore is not replaceable. Even now, as the world watches, Singapore continues to rise. Its people innovate, its systems adapt, and its vision never stops. It's more than wealth, more than technology, more than efficiency. It's a country that proves what is possible when excellence becomes a way of life. And it all started with the courage to believe that a tiny nation could stand among giants. Across the world, countries watched Singapore and dreamed of duplicating its success. 15 nations in particular became obsessed with the idea that they could build their own version of this tiny powerhouse. They studied its systems, hired consultants, and poured billions into projects designed to imitate Singapore's efficiency, safety, and wealth. But what they quickly discovered was that Singapore's greatness was not in the structures or the policies alone. It was in the heart of the nation, the mindset of its people, and the shared commitment to a vision far greater than any single individual. Take Malaysia, for instance. Just across the causeway, Malaysia had every natural advantage: larger land, abundant resources, and a bigger population. It invested heavily in urban development and economic initiatives inspired by Singapore's blueprint. Yet despite its wealth and ambition, the country struggled to match Singapore's level of governance, discipline, and long-term planning. The systems were copied, but the spirit could not be replicated.
Indonesia also sought to follow Singapore's path. In recent years, it embarked on one of the largest urban projects the world has ever seen, the creation of a new capital city designed to be modern, efficient, and globally competitive. Billions of dollars were spent, skyscrapers rose from the ground, and technology was imported from across the globe. But in practice, the challenges went beyond construction. Bureaucracy, inconsistent enforcement, and the lack of a unified national culture made it impossible to achieve the seamless precision Singapore had perfected over decades. Even Dubai, a city synonymous with ambition and wealth, tried to emulate Singapore in its own way. The city built enormous towers, created financial hubs, and positioned itself as a global center of business. Yet Dubai relied heavily on oil revenues and luxury tourism, rather than a citizen-centered culture of education, integrity, and long-term strategy. It succeeded in some areas, yes, but it was a different kind of success, one that could never match the holistic excellence of Singapore. Then there were countries in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, each attempting to create the next Singapore. Rwanda tried to replicate urban efficiency. Vietnam copied Singaporean economic policies to attract investors. Kazakhstan built modern cities with Singapore-inspired infrastructure. But one by one, these nations encountered the same problem. The systems could be copied, the buildings could be constructed, but the culture, discipline, and unity could not. Singapore's success is rooted in its people, in the way every citizen participates in the collective vision of their nation. Education is rigorous, the government is transparent, and leadership is accountable. These are not simple steps to replicate. They are the outcome of decades of intentional effort, guided by values that have been cultivated at every level of society. What these 15 countries learned, often the hard way, is that Singapore's formula is far more than a set of policies. It is a philosophy. It is the idea that excellence is a habit, that discipline is a value, and that long-term vision is more important than short-term gain. Even when countries tried to build identical infrastructure, hire Singaporean advisors, and implement similar policies, the results were mixed at best. Buildings could rise, roads could be paved, ports could be modernized, but the seamless functioning of a society, the unity of purpose, and the culture of integrity remained uniquely Singaporean.
And this is why, when other countries looked at Singapore, they didn't just see wealth or efficiency. They saw a standard that is almost impossible to achieve. They saw a nation that proves size, resources, and history are not limitations. They are opportunities. Singapore did not become a model of success overnight. Every policy, every city plan, every law was implemented with foresight and intention. Every challenge was met with a solution designed not just for today, but for the decades to come. And that is what makes it irreplaceable. The lesson these 15 countries discovered is simple yet profound. You can copy the blueprint, but you cannot copy the commitment, the mindset, and the culture that makes Singapore extraordinary. It is a living, breathing nation of ideas, executed with precision and carried forward by the people who believe in them. No matter how much ambition, money, or technology other countries threw out the challenge, Singapore remained a singular example of what a country could achieve when vision, discipline, and unity are placed above all else. Some of the most ambitious attempts came from nations with enormous resources, nations that seemed destined for success. Yet even they discovered that Singapore was not something that could simply be bought or copied. Take Saudi Arabia, for example. The country poured billions into futuristic city projects, aiming to create hubs that mirrored Singapore's urban efficiency. They built high-tech districts, smart infrastructure, and advanced transportation systems. On paper, it looked like a Singapore in the desert, but the challenge was never just technology. It was people, culture, and governance. Systems alone could not replicate the unity, discipline, or shared purpose that Singaporeans have lived for generations.
Vietnam, too, tried to emulate Singapore's economic miracle. They implemented policies to attract investment, built industrial zones, and restructured education programs. Yet even with these changes, the results were uneven. Corruption, political inconsistencies, and the lack of a singular national vision made it impossible to reach the same level of precision, safety, and trust that Singapore maintains every single day.
Kazakhstan tried something equally ambitious, creating a new capital and modern urban centers inspired by Singapore's efficiency. Skyscrapers rose from the steppe, and the city was meticulously planned. But despite modern infrastructure, it lacked the intangible qualities, the collective discipline, the civic pride, the commitment to long-term excellence that makes Singapore unique. Even Rwanda, often hailed as a model for African development, looked to Singapore as a blueprint. Roads were built, cities modernized, and foreign expertise was sought. And yet, without decades of consistent governance, a unified citizen mindset, and the systems of accountability that Singapore cultivated over time, the results fell short. What all 15 countries learned in their own ways is that Singapore's strength is not just in its physical achievements, it is in its people, its culture, and its unwavering commitment to excellence. You can replicate the buildings, you can imitate the policies, but you cannot transplant the spirit that makes Singapore exceptional. Singapore is a nation that treats excellence as a habit. Every citizen, every leader, every system is aligned toward a common vision. Education trains the mind and builds discipline. Governance enforces transparency and rewards merit. Urban planning balances efficiency with beauty, and safety is a priority, not an afterthought. The countries that tried to replace Singapore overlooked this truth. They focused on structures, investments, and technology, thinking that was enough. But Singapore's advantage was never about hardware. It was always about heart, mind, and values. And that is why, to this day, Singapore stands alone. Its success is not a coincidence. It is the result of decades of intentional effort, guided by vision and sustained by culture. It is a country that shows the world that greatness is not determined by size, resources, or geography, but by the courage to think bigger, the discipline to plan smarter, and the commitment to execute flawlessly. Even as the world watches, Singapore continues to rise. It innovates, it adapts, and it inspires. Countries may try, and they may invest, but Singapore remains irreplaceable, a beacon of what is possible when a nation aligns its people, values, and vision in perfect harmony. The lesson is clear: ambition and resources alone are not enough. Singapore is not just a country, it is a standard, a benchmark, and a model that proves the extraordinary is achievable when a nation refuses to accept limits.
Even today, Singapore continues to inspire the world. It remains a symbol of what a small nation can achieve when intelligence, discipline, and unity are placed above all else. Other countries may try, they may invest, they may study, but the essence of Singapore, the heart, the culture, the vision, cannot be copied. This is Singapore, a nation that defies expectations, a nation that proves that the extraordinary is possible, a nation that 15 other countries tried to replace and failed. Singapore is not just a place on a map. It is a standard of excellence, a benchmark for nations, and a living example of how vision, discipline, and unity can transform the impossible into reality. And as the sun rises over Marina Bay, as students walk to school, and as workers build the next innovation, Singapore continues to shine. A tiny island with the heart of a giant, unshakable and irreplaceable. The story of Singapore is a story of possibility, a story of pride, and a story the world will never forget.